the illusion of choice. Walk into any grocery aisle today, and it looks like a vibrant marketplace of endless options. Shelf after shelf, color after color, brand after brand, each promising something special. Family made, premium quality, new look, same taste. But peel back the labels, and you'll find that most of those choices aren't choices at all. The same handful of corporations control nearly everything you see. The competition on the shelves is an illusion, and the illusion is profitable. Let's start with the basics. 5 companies, Nestle, PepsiCo, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and Coca-Cola, collectively dominate the consumer packaged goods industry, especially in food and household products. Each one owns a vast network of sub-brands that appear to compete against one another, but actually funnel into the same corporate balance sheet. That means the chips in one aisle, the detergent in another, and the bottled drinks in the fridge out front are often part of the same corporate portfolio, just dressed in different marketing. Consider this: Frito-Lay and Quaker Oats, both PepsiCo. Tide and Febreze, that's Procter & Gamble. Hellmann's and Dove, Unilever. Coffee by Nescafé or pet food by Purina, Nestle again. And the Coca-Cola shelf space, sure, you've got Coke and Sprite, but the cooler next to it holds Dasani, Smart Water, Powerade, all Coke brands too. To the casual shopper, each logo looks independent, personal even. But grocery shelves aren't a democratic marketplace. They're a hall of mirrors reflecting the same few players. An illusion of variety maintains the appearance of healthy competition, yet the invisible ownership links keep profits concentrated. When people talk about voting with your wallet, that's a comforting thought. But how much choice do you really have when every ballot leads to one of 5 outcomes? The structure of modern grocery retail amplifies this control. Retailers often negotiate shelf placement contracts that favor large suppliers who can pay for the space and promotions. The Big Five dominate these arrangements. Their supply chain advantages, global distribution, advertising budgets, and decades of brand equity make it nearly impossible for smaller rivals to compete for attention, let alone price. So even if local or independent brands exist, you probably won't see them at eye level, the spot that drives most sales. And it's not just about what's visible. Consolidation has reshaped the industry quietly, but profoundly. More than 80% of many supermarket categories are now concentrated in the hands of major conglomerates. Over the past decade, dozens of regional or family-owned brands have been acquired, absorbed, and rebranded, merging into the machinery of global profit optimization. The landscape looks plural, but its ownership is singular. Let's bring that down to a single home. Picture a regular household grocery list, the kind most families write before heading out on a weekend run. Breakfast cereal, chips, shampoo, laundry detergent, bottled water, maybe a frozen meal or 2, snacks for the kids, soda for movie night. Without realizing it, that list touches 4 or even all 5 of the Big 5 companies. Switch the cereal brand, swap the soda, change the detergent, the corporations behind them barely notice. The flow of money remains constant, just redirected through another internal channel. This corporate interconnection allows something crucial: synchronized pricing power without formal collusion. Because these giants dominate supply chains and brand loyalty, they watch one another carefully. When one increases prices or changes packages, others follow within months, citing market conditions. From the outside, it looks competitive. Inside, it's a carefully watched dance, each move signaling room for profit growth without fear of losing customers to an outsider. Scale makes it possible. It's not just that they own dozens of brands, it's that they control the infrastructure behind them. Factories, ingredient sourcing, packaging, global shipping, marketing operations, all vertically integrated. This control lets them fine-tune pricing strategies region by region, adjusting where consumers have less visibility. Small manufacturers don't have that flexibility. They can't absorb supply shocks or redesign packaging overnight. The Big 5 can, and they do, not to protect consumers but to protect margins. Meanwhile, the branding itself serves as a psychological shield. Loyal customers associate each sub-brand with identity and comfort. A bottle of Coke isn't just a drink, it's nostalgia. A box of Tide isn't just detergent, it's reliability. Marketers have spent decades tying emotion to consumption, which helps disguise corporate concentration. You may resent big corporations, but you'll still grab your favorite snack out of habit. Emotional loyalty softens resistance, making the illusion stronger. To understand the depth of that illusion, Look at how language is used. Terms like family-owned, farm-fresh, or crafted with care imply authenticity, even when printed on products manufactured and distributed at industrial scale. A small batch of sauce might be produced in a plant that generates millions of jars a week. It feels personal, but it's algorithmic branding. Each new label is a psychological nudge toward trust. And once that trust is established, pricing power follows naturally. Because consumers perceive variety, they don't notice patterns of uniform cost increases across brands. When prices on multiple different products rise at the same time, most shoppers blame inflation, not coordination. It's rational behavior. Why suspect corporate design when the story on the news blames supply chains or global tensions? That confusion keeps the illusion alive. Another layer of control lies in the data. Through loyalty cards, digital coupons, direct-to-consumer websites, and subscription services, CPG giants track purchasing habits down to the zip code and family size. This real-time feedback loop, what economists call consumer sentiment analytics, lets them test price tolerance without transparency. They know how far they can push before sales dip. And because they own competing brands, small dips in one line are often offset by gains in another owned by the same parent company. In short, you can't escape the ecosystem. Even environmental movements and sustainability goals have become part of that branding illusion. Buying eco-friendly cleaning products? Often same manufacturer, different label. All-natural snack line? Parent company also sells sugar sodas under another logo. These portfolios let conglomerates profit from both guilt and indulgence, both premium pricing and discount marketing. What makes all of this possible isn't just corporate ambition, it's concentration. As smaller companies sell out or fade, the field narrows. Each remaining titan can raise prices or reduce product size without serious threat. Industry analysts call it pricing power. Consumers call it the cost of living. None of this happened overnight. For decades, mergers were approved under the assumption that bigger companies meant better efficiency and lower costs. On paper, consolidation promised economies of scale. In practice, those efficiencies rarely reached consumers. They became higher executive bonuses, shareholder dividends, and fortified market dominance. After years of expansion and acquisition, we've arrived at a paradox. Record profits alongside record frustration at the checkout counter. The illusion of choice numbs resistance. When we think there's competition, we believe the market will balance itself. But true competition requires alternatives, real alternatives, not multiple boxes with different mascots from the same corporate parent. The Big Five have rewritten that definition, designing a grocery ecosystem where the boundaries blur and accountability disappears. Once you control what people can buy, the next move is deciding how much they'll pay. And that's exactly what came next. Because while consumers were busy choosing between red packaging and blue, these companies were quietly adjusting the rules of the game, setting prices not by necessity, but by opportunity. The price surge nobody saw coming. In early 2020, prices started to climb. The explanation made sense at first: broken supply chains, container shortages, labor disruptions, and energy spikes. Consumers accepted it as a temporary storm. Economists said prices would normalize once the world reopened. But when 2024 came around and ports were clear, fuel stabilized, and raw materials fell, the storm didn't pass. Grocery prices stayed high. The strange part wasn't that inflation had occurred, it was that it refused to leave. This is where the story of greedflation begins. The Big Five, Nestle, PepsiCo, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and Coca-Cola, told investors they were simply managing cost pressures and maintaining value. But their financial statements told another story. Revenues rose only slightly, yet profit margins expanded. Ingredient costs declined, but shelf prices didn't. The difference between those two lines, costs and prices, became the quiet engine of record corporate growth. Let's trace it. In 2022, prices soared across everything from snacks to soap. Consumers braced for what many thought would be a short-term pain. When input costs began falling in 2023, shoppers expected relief. Instead, the Big Five doubled down. PepsiCo's CEO told analysts that strategic pricing would continue even as costs stabilized. P&G described price increases as structural, a polite way of saying permanent. Every statement reassured investors more than consumers, and quarter after quarter, profits climbed. By mid-2024, the numbers were unambiguous. Commodity indexes for sugar, palm oil, and packaging materials had dropped back toward pre-pandemic levels. Transportation costs normalized. Yet household staples, soda, detergents, coffee, snack foods, remained 25 to 40% more expensive than before the pandemic. What changed wasn't the cost structure, it was the justification. Companies argued that higher wages, sustainability investments, and consumer expectations now required lasting price adjustments. Behind that corporate language was a simple truth. Once consumers accepted a new normal, there was no reason to roll prices back. Economists began calling it price stickiness, but some labeled it more bluntly greedflation. The term captured what many suspected. Corporations were inflating prices beyond necessity, exploiting the confusion of global crisis to reset the scale of acceptable pricing. The trick worked because consumers had been conditioned to blame inflation itself, not the decision-makers leveraging it. Consider what happened inside manufacturing plants. By 2023, raw material expenses had eased, but instead of reducing prices, executives celebrated margin recovery. Earnings calls from Nestle and Unilever highlighted pricing discipline as a key profit driver. It wasn't innovation, efficiency, or improved supply chains. It was the decision to keep prices high after costs fell. Investors applauded. Consumers, meanwhile, kept tightening their belts. The psychological element was powerful. Most shoppers don't track commodity markets or quarterly filings. They only see that prices rise faster than paychecks. When each company individually insists its changes are unavoidable, few notice that competitors are saying the exact same thing. What looks like coincidence is pattern. According to analysts, CPG profit margins averaged about 30% through 2025, nearly the same as during years of cheap inputs. The crisis had ended, but the crisis pricing stayed. And still, the narrative held. Public statements pointed to lingering supply volatility, shipping routes, or currency fluctuations. Each explanation contained just enough truth to sound convincing. But if those factors truly drove costs, prices would have fallen in sync when conditions improved. They didn't. The reason? Corporations learned consumers would tolerate more than anyone expected. Meanwhile, personal budgets told a harsher story. Families started skipping small luxuries, stretched meals further, or substituted fresh food for processed alternatives. Disposable income that once went towards savings or recreation was absorbed by necessities: soap, toothpaste, snacks, drinks. At the macro level, this was invisible profit extraction. At the kitchen table, it was frustration and fatigue. Online, that frustration turned vocal. TikTok and Reddit filled with videos comparing old packages to new receipts. Posts showing smaller bags of chips or thinner rolls of paper towels went viral. People weren't just complaining, they were investigating, documenting proof that something bigger was happening. How is this $7 now? Echoed across feeds, often below screenshots of corporate earnings reports boasting double-digit growth. The financial press eventually caught up. Reporters noticed the gap between falling costs and stubbornly high retail tags. One study estimated that over half of grocery price increases since 2022 couldn't be explained by supply or labor costs alone. Those invisible percentages translated into tens of billions in extra revenue. What looked like inflation was really a wealth transfer, disguised by packaging and justified through jargon. Even internal analysts acknowledged it. One beverage executive admitted off-record that consumers built new price anchors. In plain English, once customers got used to paying more, rolling back became unprofitable. Prices, once lifted, rarely descend. It's like pulling on an elastic band. After you stretch it, it never fully snaps back. By 2025, the pattern solidified. Shoppers felt defeated, politicians talked of corporate responsibility, and executives continued to promise price discipline on investor calls. Unilever celebrated strong delivery in pricing and mix, code for higher price points offsetting lower sales volume. The Big Five had discovered something remarkable. Even as people bought slightly less, total revenue could still climb if each purchase delivered more profit. It was classic elasticity reversed, less for more. Here's how it worked structurally. In grocery categories dominated by the Big Five, competitors mirrored one another within weeks. If PepsiCo raised prices on snack foods, it signaled safe territory for Coca-Cola's beverage lines or Nestle's confectionery portfolio. No formal agreement was needed. The market concentration itself acted as coordination. In effect, inflation became a convenient buffer, an excuse to push limits simultaneously across industries. Because every brand moved together, consumers had nowhere else to go. Greedflation wasn't pure invention, it exploited timing. The chaos of pandemic disruption gave corporations cover. News cycles focused on shipping crises or global grain shortages, creating a story that sounded reasonable. When those narratives faded, most consumers had already adapted. The outrage had passed, replaced by reluctant acceptance. The silent victory was psychological. Train people to expect the worst, and they stop noticing improvement that never arrives. For households, that meant permanent strain. Grocery bills that once consumed 10% of income now ate closer to 15 or 20% for lower-income families. Each trip became a quiet negotiation between necessity and sacrifice. Meanwhile, corporate boards celebrated resilience and innovation. The story of survival during inflation became a bragging point at shareholder meetings. The widening gap between corporate rhetoric and household reality might be the clearest evidence of the hidden tax underway. The extra 20 or 30% on a receipt doesn't flow to farmers, truck drivers, or store clerks. It ends as shareholder payouts and executive bonuses. Economists call it redistribution via pricing power. Consumers call it getting ripped off. By the end of 2024, the price surge no one expected had turned into a plateau no one could escape. Across continents, governments debated intervention, but regulation lagged far behind corporate agility. In boardrooms, executives spoke of value capture and portfolio optimization. On the ground, shoppers carried lighter bags home. Still, companies weren't satisfied. Prices could only rise so far before backlash hit. So the next evolution had to be subtler, one that wouldn't trigger outrage at the register. The next play wasn't about higher numbers on price tags. It was about smaller quantities inside the packaging. Because once the ceiling on visible inflation was reached, corporations looked for a way to hide increases in plain sight. And that's where shrinkflation came in, the disappearing product that completed the illusion of inflation's permanence. What came next wasn't a new round of price hikes. It was a quieter trick that turned every familiar item into a slightly smaller version of itself, invisible until the pantry felt emptier. Shrinkflation, the disappearing product. By 2025, shoppers had started noticing something strange. A bag of chips that once filled the top of a lunchbox now sagged halfway down. The coffee canister that looked the same on the outside suddenly scooped fewer cups. The candy bar in a familiar wrapper felt lighter in the hand. The price tag hadn't changed, but the product had. And in the language of corporate strategy, that quiet disappearance had a name: shrinkflation. Shrinkflation isn't new, but its reach today is astonishing. It's the corporate sleight of hand that converts consumer confidence into shareholder gain, subtle enough to stay below outrage levels yet powerful enough to generate billions in extra margin. Manufacturers reduce the quantity of product while maintaining, or even raising, the price. The form stays the same, the value doesn't. For a while, the trick worked beautifully because most people simply didn't notice. Take cereal. The average box that used to contain 19 ounces now holds 15 or fewer, trimmed by cardboard redesigns that keep the height identical but narrow the sides. Coffee has dropped from 16 ounces down to 10.5 in many leading brands. Potato chips that weighed 9.75 ounces a few years ago now list 8.25. Soda bottles lost 3 ounces in the standard single-serve category. Candy bars, paper towels, instant noodles, one by one they shrank. And across store shelves, that consistent shrink of contents often translated to an invisible 10 to 15% price jump per unit. The data backs it up. Surveys show over 75% of grocery shoppers noticed smaller packages in the last month alone. Nearly half say they've switched brands because of it. In economic terms, that's unprecedented consumer awareness. But for the Big Five, it hasn't slowed the tactic. Why? Because shrinkflation is less damaging than direct price hikes. Psychologically, customers react more strongly to a higher number on a label than they do to a slightly lighter bottle. Companies exploit that asymmetry. They know the mind notices digits before ounces. Executives defend it as necessity. They cite rising labor costs, transportation volatility, or ingredient scarcity as justification. Yet cost indexes tell another story. Between 2023 and 2024, input prices for essentials like sugar and palm oil fell, but retailers never expanded product sizes again. Once a shrinked portion hits the shelves, it rarely returns. To consumers, it looks like survival tactics. To corporations, it's profit optimization. Packaging engineering has become the art form behind the deception. Designers create illusionary packaging, containers with thicker bottoms or curved sides that preserve the silhouette. A bag may look identical while holding fewer grams. A jar might have an inward slope hidden by a label. Every detail is studied in focus groups to test whether customers perceive it as smaller. The goal is to find the invisibility threshold, the maximum reduction before people complain. That boundary gets tested constantly through regional rollouts. Take soda as an example. In 2024, several beverage giants quietly shifted from 20-ounce bottles to 18.5 while keeping multipack prices the same. On paper, that shrank content by about 7.5%. In earnings reports, executives framed it as optimized packaging for sustainability. The actual environmental savings were trivial, the margin expansion was not. That half-inch reduction per bottle generated hundreds of millions in additional profit across global distribution. Shrinkflation thrives where regulation can't or won't intervene. Label laws require only accurate net weight statements, not consistency over time. As long as the number matches the content, there's no deception under most consumer protection statutes. Politically, that gray area gives companies ample cover. Economically, it's a loophole, the perfect way to mask greedflation's continuation after visible inflation becomes socially unacceptable. What makes shrinkflation especially clever is its cumulative effect. Each individual change seems minor, a few ounces here, a handful there. But over months, it compounds. That box of breakfast cereal isn't just smaller once. It's smaller again the next year, each reduction timed to coincide with new packaging or improved recipe campaigns. Analysts call it attritional inflation. Small enough to avoid protests, steady enough to keep profits expanding. Consumers, however, are catching on. Social media posts comparing old packaging to new have turned into crowdsourced watchdog groups. One viral thread showed side-by-side images of ice cream cartons losing volume while boasting same great taste. Another tracked toilet paper rolls cut from 425 sheets to 380. People began photographing price per ounce labels and calculating the stealth cost increase. That visibility turned shrinkflation from a quiet tactic into public scandal, at least online. Even so, sales stayed strong. For conglomerates, outrage without boycott is manageable. Brand inertia, convenience, and habit buffer against customer defection. The Big Five have decades of data on this behavior. They know that only a small fraction of buyers compare unit prices. A redesign paired with a marketing campaign can even turn shrinkage into virtue. Sustainable packaging, waste reduction, calorie control. The rhetoric reframes downsizing as innovation rather than extraction. Here's where the incentive lies. A 1% reduction in package size across multi-billion-dollar product lines can translate to tens of millions in cost savings yearly. Multiply that across detergent, beverage, and snack divisions, and the math becomes staggering. The same shipment trucks haul more units at lower weight, reducing freight expenses. Warehousing becomes cheaper. Shelf space density improves. Margins widen, all without the consumer seeing a larger number on the price tag. Economically, shrinkflation functions as a silent tax, small, repetitive, and unavoidable. Each reduced package means consumers buy sooner, restock faster, and spend more frequently. It tilts the time cycle of consumption forward, accelerating corporate cash flow. A 10% content cut might sound modest, but across 7 billion people buying daily necessities, that sliver becomes a transfer of wealth at planetary scale. Some economists argue that shrinkflation is preferable to open price gouging because at least it limits sticker shock. But that argument misses the moral core. Transparency matters. When a company raises prices, customers can choose to walk away. When package sizes change subtly, choice disappears under confusion. The illusion of stability masks ongoing extraction. In effect, it's deception legalized by technical compliance. The consumer response follows predictable psychology. At first, people think it's memory failing them. The box couldn't have been bigger, right? Then irritation sets in. Eventually, resignation. Surveys show that once consumers accept shrinkflation as normal, purchase patterns stabilize again. That's precisely the result companies count on. They ride the emotional curve from surprise to apathy, then quietly repeat the cycle a few quarters later. And still, brands speak in the language of empathy. Press releases frame these choices as responses to unprecedented cost environments. Ad campaigns emphasize values, community, family, sustainability, distracting from numeric reality. Meanwhile, internal presentations measure pack size elasticity and value perception maintenance. In other words, they track how much smaller a product can become before anyone cares. The broader irony? Shrinkflation can even inflate corporate environmental scores. By shipping smaller products, companies report lower carbon footprints, earning praise for the same changes driving extra profit. Regulators, lacking context, count lighter packaging as progress. Investors celebrate sustainability metrics. Consumers applaud eco-responsibility, unaware that their reduced portion size finances the green halo. In many ways, shrinkflation is greedflation's stealth successor. When open price hikes met public anger, the industry shifted tactics. Instead of raising digits on tags, they re-engineered the products themselves. What once felt like inflation now hides behind marketing language and subtle geometry. For corporations chasing quarterly results, it's the perfect compromise, more earnings with less scrutiny. But every illusion has a cost. Shrinkflation erodes trust, that invisible currency between brand and buyer. Once customers feel deceived, loyalty cracks. 48% of Americans say they've abandoned a brand after discovering downsizing. And though many eventually circle back out of convenience, that erosion leaves scars. Over time, even low-income consumers, those most affected, become hyper-aware bargain hunters, skeptical of slogans and increasingly reliant on discount chains or bulk warehouses. That mistrust reshapes the entire market dynamic, forcing smaller retailers to adapt and amplifying price sensitivity across demographics. At its heart, shrinkflation exposes the evolution of corporate strategy from cost management to behavioral manipulation. It's not just about saving pennies, it's about engineering perception itself, teaching consumers to accept less under the illusion of sameness. And behind every shrunken package lies a decision boardroom tested for profitability, wrapped in smiling mascots and pastel colors. What drives those decisions isn't survival anymore. The supply shocks are over. The crisis excuses have faded. What remains is hunger for shareholder returns, executive bonuses, and investor applause. In that pursuit, a few missing ounces here, and they're hardly register as ethical concern. Yet for the shopper who notices, the betrayal cuts deeper than the price difference. It's a realization. Even the shape of the everyday has been adjusted to serve corporate profit. Behind those smaller packages are choices made not by necessity, but by the relentless appetite of the shareholder class. The groceries didn't shrink by accident, they were engineered to. And in that silent design, the line between survival strategy and exploitation disappeared just as quietly as a few ounces of coffee from the bag.